It's an awareness of our media awareness, that is, which is a subject of Austin Faith Dialogue today. Please join us.
This is Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program discussing the important crossroad of religion in life, produced by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues throughout our area. Now, today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Richard Thompson of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, welcoming you to this edition. Today we're going to be thinking in terms of the kind of proverbial fish who was asked, what is it like to live in the ocean? To which the fish replied, what ocean? We all live in a media of influence in this electronic era in which we are surrounded by radio and television, and sometimes we breathe in and out of our mental and our emotional and, yes, even our spiritual gills this influence without being aware of it. To help us become more aware, we have folks with us today who give particular insight into what has been called the media literacy movement. Among these is Terry McDaniel, who works with the Austin Diocese as a consultant on media affairs. We have Cynthia Goodner-Bach, who is the Council for Public Media. And we have with us John C. Wright, who is at the University of Texas, with particular emphasis on children's television research. Right. We welcome all of you to our program today, and would like to begin, I think, Cynthia, with you, as far as you're having a particular interest in making people aware of the influence of media. Tell us what's going on in Austin in that regard and your role in it.
Well, the reason I'm involved is because I'm a parent, and because I'm also a citizen. And I work actually with two different organizations, Council for Public Media and the Cultural Environment Movement. Both of those organizations are involved in finding a way for citizens to have more access to the public airwaves and to find a way to get more on the media than what is marketable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's having to do with the quality of what's coming over the air. I've heard the cultural environmental movement described as the folks who are as concerned about the quality of what comes over the airways as we are about the air we breathe in the ecology.
Right, they talk a lot about the pollution of our cultural environment.
Okay. Okay, Terry, tell us a little bit about, from the standpoint of your work with the diocese, what it is that you're doing and what you hope will happen as a result of that.
Okay, well, thank you. Richard, it's a pleasure to be here. Let me say that the work with the diocese is important, but it's somewhat secondary. I, like Cynthia, I'm also a parent and a citizen and concerned about the size and influence of the media into the culture today, and to a great extent in a very invisible way, as your analogy of the fish very aptly demonstrated, I believe. I also am an investment counselor here in Austin. We do invest in companies, and I'd say that is also very important from the standpoint of my own perspective, because it gives me certain liberties, I guess, in terms of looking at the media and making some judgments, which are certainly not the most correct things to be doing today. But we do it, and we have to do it, in looking at the products of media companies. Mm-hmm. And it's much like looking at the products of any commercial company, looking at cereal companies or automobile companies. And so when you look at the products from that standpoint, from the standpoint of the free markets, I think you get a very interesting perspective about these products and media companies, and to a great extent an incriminating perspective, because many of the products are quite shoddy. As far as the diocese is concerned, I do consult about media to Bishop John McCarthy here and to the Roman Catholic Diocese. We have a media information section, entertainment information, primarily in the Catholic paper each month. And this is for the purpose of educating children, but also primarily, I would say, educating parents about the entertainment products that are out there, movies and music and TV.
Right, giving media the broadest definition, so it's not just television.
Exactly.
Okay, John, welcome to Austin. I know you just moved here recently.
Delighted and thrilled to be in Austin and on your show.
Well, thank you. And you've been noted for your research in children's television, and give us a little bit of sense of what that is, conclusions you've been drawing from that.
Well, Professor Aletha Houston and I founded a Center for Research on the Influence of Television on Children some 20 years ago. We call it CRITIC. We actually thought of the acronym first and had a contest to see if they could think of a staff could think of a name that would spell that. So maybe that tells you something about our initial position, which was that television as it was constituted, and we've come since to understand what we mean by that, was really commercial broadcast entertainment television, was not giving kids a very fair shake in America 20 years ago. It still isn't. Fortunately, other forms that are either not commercial or not broadcast or not primarily designed to entertain have filled the gap. And partly that's due to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS. And partly it's due to a growing awareness among Americans that they don't have to watch junk programming designed to exploit kids, that their kids can in fact watch high-quality videos, download satellite programs. My grandchildren, 6 of them, I'm proud to mention them on here, sorry about that, watch a lot of television. They want to watch a lot of children's programming, usually pretty high quality, because they've never heard of commercial broadcast entertainment television. There are no rabbit ears. There's a cable, but they don't know that. What they do is watch television by taking their favorite show off the shelf. And my next to youngest granddaughter, who's about 2, has as her favorite program what she calls Papageno. And this is a scene, as you may recall, from the marriage of Mozart's opera, The Marriage of Figaro, in which Papageno sings a very lively song, and several people change their clothes as winter turns to spring before your eyes. Now, she's watching this with absolute delight, no appreciation that that's high culture or might be regarded as educational. If she knew that, she might not watch it. But she's getting a sampling of some of the best that there is in video, and she's not watching junk.
Well, I think
so
that,
our role, Rich, really has been to conduct the scientific research on the basis of which parents and regulators, the FCC and formerly the Federal Trade Commission as well, can correct abuses and can suggest and promote what is good for children instead of exploiting them.
Sounds like you've used your own grandchildren as kind of a case study of what you hope would happen in a larger sense.
They get a lot of new videos to try out from me.
John, could I ask you, just from your experience with this and in your family, I mean, this is very good. Have you had influence with other families or friends of your children that have picked up on this? To what extent is this movement spreading?
Well, I don't think what we're doing as a movement, although the media literacy group that we're here to talk about is, in a way, a movement. But what I see it as, the metaphor is more like parents' understanding about nutrition, parents' understanding about what they need to provide in a healthy diet for kids. And there are clear connections between bad diet and bad health, epidemiological studies, just like smoking and lung cancer. And there are clear connections between bad TV and bad educational and personal and social outcomes for kids. But what encourages us is that there's a similar positive connection between good TV and good outcomes. And if Rich will let me later on in the program, I'll tell you something about that. But my own experience with kids is that heavy TV viewers, first of all, they're not kids who never read. They read a lot, too. Typically, heavy TV viewers don't read any less than light TV viewers. We have this crazy idea. There was a Gary Larson Far Side cartoon a few years ago of a family sitting on a couch staring at a blank wall, all facing the same direction. And the caption said, "In the days before TV." That isn't what we did. And nor do kids who don't watch much TV turn to wonderful cultural, spiritual, enhancing activities to fill their time.
Well, I think one of the things that comes out of the media awareness movement, I know in Los Angeles there's a Center for Media Literacy that produces videos for instructing teachers as well as people in the church and parents how to parent in the TV age and how to have an impact, not just passively responding, but to be proactive in relation to this. And I know, Cynthia, in terms of what you want to do before the show you're talking about opening spaces of some sort. Explain what that means.
Well, that's something that the Council for Public Media is about, and that would be reclaiming the public spaces where public discourse takes place. And it goes back to the notion that in the past you had a public square where people could exchange ideas freely, and it wasn't because you were marketable that you got heard, but finding a way for the public to regain some space on the public airwaves. I wanted to say on the way that media literacy that we're talking about now, we're talking about parents a lot and about how parents can take a management role in what their children see rather than just letting it wash over them, like choosing what to watch. I've seen a lot of things that advise that parents can take out the TV listings and choose, and kids, and they can decide how many hours a week they want to watch, and they can choose what they're going to look at rather than just turning on the least objectionable program at the time.
Well, now, I guess the thing that I thought about in terms of public space is we forget that the airways are owned by the public. And there seems to be an amnesia as far as remembering that everything that's on the air is on a public owned property, and that you think that makes a difference, that we've forgotten that, Terry?
Well, I don't know that we've forgotten it. I think that what we have here is maybe the worst consequences of democracy, in a sense, in that to a great extent the public is getting what it wants or what it's demanding in the short term. And I think that that's where this movement for media literacy is very appropriate, because to a great extent we don't understand the full consequences of this electronic media ocean that we're swimming around in, just as with the fish.
Does the public really want violence, though? I mean, with all as much...
Well, I mean, certainly if you go down to any theater and look at the lines that are waiting to get into these very violent films, I mean, that's the free market at work. I mean, these are people that are there of their own volition. No one's forcing them to stand there in line and pay $6.50 for a ticket. So I think all the way back historically to Plato, I mean, we've sort of looked at democracy and free markets and said, hey, there's some aspects to this that aren't necessarily good. We don't necessarily always choose the best thing. Many times we choose the most expeditious thing. We choose the most rewarding option in the short term. And to some extent, I think we're doing that. I mean, how many of us, frankly, go home at the end of a very busy day, and we turn on the television. We don't turn on to the Discovery Channel many times, or to C-SPAN, or to the public station. Many times we turn on to some sitcom or something and sit there and zone out. I mean, and I think a lot of people do this.
Okay, well, one thing that we need to turn on to is we're about to take a break here, and we're going to be coming back in just a few moments to continue our discussion about media literacy and particularly how this plays out in Austin, Texas. So stay with us.
Serving Austin means serving you. That has always been the primary goal of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. We are religion in action through the work of these organizations. Each plays a key role in making the capital city a better place to live, but we can't do it alone. Do you have some spare time, talents, or any resources that you can share? If you do, please call AMM at 472-7627 because serving Austin means serving you.
Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue, where today on television we're talking about television and how to be aware of its influence and make some proactive response to that. And we're having Terry McDaniel, who's helping with the Austin Diocese in this regard, Cynthia Boggoodner, who has worked in the area of public media, kind of, I would think, more of an advocacy sort of thing, and as well as education. And John Wright, who is an educator at UT, was at Kansas, University of Kansas before coming here. Before, in the first half, I wanted to come back to something that you kind of touched on, John. You were at the White House conferences. Tell us a little bit about the impact that was had there and how that relates to media literacy.
Well, from the point of view of media literacy, which is, after all, the understanding of everything about the medium and your use of it so that you can kind of be in charge, these White House conferences were, I think, productive and useful. Not because they dealt with media literacy directly, but because they dealt with what ought to be available to children on all the media, including the internet and including computer software and everything else, video games and everything else. And they gathered people with some information, some important perspectives, but in particular the perspective that we represent and feel is critical is the empirical laboratory and field research work that generates data, not just descriptive of the media, not just ratings and how well are we doing and how do they like us, but what do children learn? What is the actual effect of watching different kinds of programming on children?
And the effect of this research was to help, like with this 3 hours of children's television that came out of the administration?
The current FCC rule, the commission decided on that. The administration was in favor of it, but the administration can't control the FCC.
I see.
The FCC passes rules which have the force of law unless or until they're challenged in the court. If the general area of rulemaking has been authorized by Congress, which it was in this case in the Children's Television Act of 1990. Well, what we did at the White House conferences, the first one was simply to celebrate the fact that educational programming for children has positive effects on learning. And we were able to report a study where 2 to 5-year-old children who watched anywhere from 3 to 5 hours of educational television, informative television, specifically made to educate and inform children, by the time they were ready for school, had higher test scores in school readiness, higher reading readiness, higher math readiness. They had better vocabularies. They had, they even by age 7 in the 2nd grade had better reading paragraph comprehension by nationally standardized tests. And the size of the effect was significant. It was what we call about 1/3 of a standard deviation.
Okay, well, now I'm deviating out of my consciousness here to wanting to know about the role that, for you said Al Gore, for instance, had a particularly strong role in this.
Of all those in the top of the administration, Al Gore has had the particular portfolio since they were inaugurated to look out for children and media issues. And Tipper Gore has had a long history of concern with adolescents and media. And so the 4 of them, the President and the First Lady and Al Gore and Tipper Gore, have had a great deal to say about this. One of the things that the President is taking credit for now, and I think the credit belongs to lots of people, but I'm sure glad he's on board, is both the approval of the V-chip as a required entity in all television receivers and monitors that are manufactured in the United States beginning in about 3 years, I think.
Right.
And secondly, the requirement that has now been made into a rule by the FCC, and which, take note please, the National Association of Broadcasters has agreed not to contest. which says that as a condition of licensure, television stations licensed in the United States will provide evidence of doing at least 3 hours a week of informative and educational programming directed to children and made for children.
Well, I'm sure it's gratifying to know that your research has had, a practical effect. And I'm thinking, too, of the effect of what happened several years ago. I think it was one of the first political leaders that spoke about this was, who was the one that talked about Murphy Brown? Dan Quayle, I think it was.
Right.
And then Bob Dole later spoke about his concern over the mega corporations, supporting gangsta rap and putting money into that sort of thing. So, I mean, media literacy is found as expression at the highest levels of government, I think, in various ways like that. And Terry, what was your feeling about how that contributed to the cause one way or the other?
Well, I think that there's a great contribution to the cause. I think the one thing that comes out of this is that the media, and whether we call it problems or opportunity with the media, this is not a singularly faceted situation, and the solutions are not singular. We can't, in other words, just expect parents, for example, to do nothing but buy videotapes or turn off their television and closely monitor the behavior of their children.
So what else needs to be done?
Well, the other thing is we have the other side of this. We have the whole delivery operation of this media product. We do have corporations that are flooding the markets with these things. We have to address that. What has happened to some extent is that there has been such an imbalance in a sense of the power of corporations and mega conglomerates, and these things are now going international and global. And when you look at the control that's exercised by ABC or Turner or Disney or Warner, Time Warner, enormous power that these corporations have.
And I've heard, by the way, that the reason that there's so much violence that's produced is that travels. It's not that they're necessarily the most popular programs on
It's
TV.
easier to translate violence than comedy or drama because of cultural differences.
It doesn't. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the language in terms of
But it's also exciting.
That's the universality of the Punch and Judy show. Remember,
Right.
the Punch and Judy show is mostly mayhem.
Yeah.
It's not exactly what I want to be known for exporting, but
We did a couple of studies a few years back because we wanted to know if violence really appeals to kids as much as the broadcasters say it does. And they use that as their rationale.
Right.
So we made some special tapes which separated physical action, running around, excitement, the chase, the suspense, from violence, where one person deliberately injures or hurts another, or threatens to. All right? And so we had high action, low violence, high violence, low action, high, and low. All right? Now the kids were more interested in the high than the low. So far, score one for the broadcasters. But when you compare high violence, low action, which the kids didn't really much like, with high action, low violence, which they did like and watched, and we're talking measurement of their eyeballs with the camera, when they had other things to look at in the room, they really focused on it, and they really watched it, and they really learned from it, much more than from high violence, low action. I maintain, and programs like Rescue 911 have proven it with audience ratings, that people will watch a half an hour of a full school bus teetering on a guardrail while everybody scrambles to perform a rescue with absolute rapt attention and deep involvement. And kids like that too. Excitement, suspense, emotional impact
Right.
does not require violence, threats, damage of one person by another.
Okay. Well, I think that one of the things we want to do in Austin particularly is to bring to public attention, and more than just one program like this, what is involved in the process of improving our air quality, or what's on the air quality. And Cynthia, I know for a couple of years you've been working in this realm, and we're going to have this conference at St. Edward's University in February the 22nd of '97. Which Liz Tolman, who's the director for the Center for Media Literacy, will be here on a Saturday morning to share this with the public. And I think one of the things we want to do is let people know just how much is going on in Austin right now, and tell us a little bit about what is happening now.
I know that that KLRU has got a fairly active, what is it, PTV program, and they're doing some programs with some schools, and a woman who works there, Linda Schmidt, is also doing workshops for some schools. And I think that the PTA of Texas has done some critical viewing leadership training and supposedly will have some other workshops. I've been calling around to try and find out how to get a hold of those and who's doing that in Austin. I haven't got an answer yet, but I've only just started calling. Also, Region 13 Service Center, Education Service Centers, has in the past offered a free workshop called No TV, which was developed by Renee Hobbs. And
Harvard, I think she's...
Right, she's at Harvard. But these were workshops that they offered for free for parents and teachers to come out to.
Okay, and I know, Terry, I've heard you speak of something that's taken into the schools and the churches, young people going in and doing some dramatizations to heighten awareness.
Well, that is one of the things that we do through the diocese is we do have what's called a media team, which is composed of essentially some college students from UT and from A&M, various schools, and they go into the youth the youth departments of the various parishes and have a presentation on the media. And it really is media education of what are exactly the messages that are coming through in commercials and in particular types of production. And we find a very high interest among young people in this area. I think that were there more educational efforts like this, I think it would be very well received by young people. They're very anxious to learn about the media. It's an exciting area.
When you have young people actually being the ones that are doing the presentations, and that carries some authority, I'm sure, with other younger folks.
Oh, exactly, yeah. We don't understand this very well.
Yeah. Well, I think in the minute that we have left that we've said so many different things here today and made some references to a number of different resources that the number at the end of the program of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, the 472-7627 number, will be shown, and we would encourage viewers to be in touch with us through that means, and would encourage folks to take note of that February 22nd gathering, and hope that we can have all of you there to continue the conversation. And I think the final remark that I'd like to make is that we have, I have to tell you that Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is a Presbyterian minister, ordained, and when he first started doing that program, well, I think we all agree one of the most creative for children that even adults tune into, that is showing how faith commitment influences the quality of our productions. So I want to thank you all for being here, Terry and Cynthia and John, and to you folks for joining us on this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Richard Thompson, and peace be with you.
For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.